The 2025 Formula One season has refused to follow any predictable pattern. Red Bull, once the uncheckable force of modern F1, has found itself grappling with the unexpected. A narrow performance window, baffling Fridays, and a relentless double threat from McLaren's Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. For Max Verstappen, a driver whose dominance once seemed unassailable, every race weekend now feels like a chess match, where a single setup misstep could cost him critical ground in the championship. But something changed at Imola. After a difficult start to the weekend, Verstappen and Red Bull executed a stunning turnaround, culminating in a commanding victory that could signal a vital turning point in their 2025 campaign. With Monaco now looming, a circuit that's traditionally exposed Red Bull's weaknesses, the question is, did Imola truly unlock the secrets of the RB21? Or was it merely a well-timed fluke? If you're an F1 fan hungry for insight into how the tide may be turning, this is the video for you. Subscribe now to stay ahead of the curve, because what happens in Monaco could redefine this season. Let's break it down. What happened in Imola might just be the spark Red Bull needed to reignite their 2025 campaign. But to truly understand why this matters, we have to peel back the layers of the RB21's turbulent season, and why Max Verstappen's Imola triumph wasn't just a win, but a roadmap back to dominance. Let's start with the problem. Since the opening rounds of the 2025 season, Red Bull's biggest enemy hasn't been McLaren, Ferrari, or even Mercedes. It's been their own machinery. The RB21, Red Bull's latest creation under Pierre Watch's direction, was built with a very specific goal: to be more drivable, more adaptable, and to allow Verstappen a wider operating window. It sounds ideal in theory, but the real-world execution hasn't gone to plan. In preseason testing, Verstappen admitted that Red Bull had deliberately taken a step back in terms of peak performance to make the car more neutral and usable across a wider range of conditions. The problem? That step back dulled the car's edge, and instead of giving Verstappen a predictable machine, it created a car that was painfully sensitive to even the smallest setup variations. In other words, Red Bull tried to make the RB21 easier to understand, but in doing so, they made it harder to master. That explains why, weekend after weekend, we've seen Verstappen look lost on Fridays, often nowhere near the top 5 in FP1 and FP2. Even Verstappen doesn't fully understand it, famously saying, "I wish I knew why the Fridays are not always great." But we don't do it on purpose, I swear. It's a mystery even to the man behind the wheel. But that mystery may have started to unravel in Imola. After a lackluster Friday where the RB21 once again failed to fire, Red Bull dug deep. They made aggressive changes overnight. Data was poured over, simulator feedback dissected, and setup decisions taken with precision. And the result? A car that not only qualified on the front row but delivered a race pace that left the rest scrambling. Verstappen's move around the outside of Piastri into Tombrello was as audacious as it was clinical. It wasn't just a pass, it was a declaration. Red Bull were back in business. What changed? Verstappen called it a very useful lesson, and while he was coy on the details, the signs point to Red Bull unlocking something vital in the car's behavior, likely around suspension setup and ride height, to areas that have plagued them since Monaco last year. The RB21, much like its predecessor, still struggles with curbs, bumps, and traction zones, traits that make it deeply uncomfortable on street circuits like Monaco and Singapore. But in Imola, a track that blends high-speed sweeps with heavy braking zones and elevation changes, the team finally found a way to keep the car in its ideal performance window. It's worth noting that this transformation didn't happen in isolation. Red Bull brought a significant upgrade package to Imola. Revised barge boards, a tweaked diffuser, a more aggressive floor edge, and subtle adjustments to the rear suspension geometry. Christian Horner called it their best performance since Brazil 2024. That's no small praise, especially when you consider how unconvincing they looked in Miami just 2 weeks earlier, where McLaren blew the field apart. So why does this matter heading into Monaco? Because Monaco is arguably Red Bull's biggest test of the season so far. This is the track where their weaknesses are most exposed. Last year, Verstappen finished 6th here, his worst result in nearly 2 seasons. The car simply could not cope with the uneven tarmac, the low-speed hairpins, and the incessant bumpiness of the street surface. Verstappen's frustration was audible in every team radio message. And while the RB21 is technically new, it's clear those core issues haven't gone away. Verstappen himself admitted this week, "It is a fact that that's normally not our strong point." That's telling. Even after Imola's success, he's approaching Monaco with caution. And rightly so. Because here's the reality. McLaren aren't just fast. They're fast everywhere. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris have emerged as the most consistent and dangerous threat to Red Bull in the last 12 months. Piastri's growth has been extraordinary. He's no longer just the other McLaren driver. He's a genuine title contender. His pole in Imola wasn't a fluke. His wins in Miami and Jeddah weren't handed to him. He earned them. Norris, too, has found a level of consistency that has eluded him in previous seasons. Together, they are forcing Red Bull to confront the fact that they no longer control the pace of the championship. Verstappen currently sits third in the drivers' standings, 9 points behind Norris, with Piastri a further 13 ahead. That's a 22-point gap to the top. Not insurmountable, but significant, especially when you consider the nature of the circuits coming up. Monaco, Montreal, Barcelona, and the Red Bull Ring. It's a mix of street circuits, fast sweepers, and technical corners. If Red Bull's setup issues persist, they could fall further behind. That's why Verstappen's Imola win was so important. It wasn't just a 25-point boost. It was psychological. It reminded the paddock, and maybe even Red Bull themselves, that they're still capable of outfoxing the field. But it also came with a warning. If you take the average of Miami and Imola, Verstappen said, "I don't think we look that great, so we have to be calm." That calm, however, masks an intense urgency within Red Bull. Behind the scenes, the team is working flat out to develop new solutions. There's talk of another floor update before Austria, and a revised suspension concept aimed at improving mechanical grip for circuits like Monaco and Singapore. Verstappen is pushing hard for those changes. He knows that performance, not consistency, is what will win him a 5th consecutive world title. And here's the twist. Verstappen doesn't believe in playing it safe this season. "I think what we have to focus on is just performance," he said. "The more performance we have, the easier we make it for ourselves." That's a bold stance. In a tight title fight, most drivers would look to minimize risk, rack up podiums, and strike when opportunity knocks. But Verstappen is taking the opposite route. He wants to go on the offensive. To win, not just survive. This is shaping up to be a different kind of title battle. One that isn't decided by domination, but by marginal gains, strategic pivots, and whoever adapts fastest. McLaren's car is quick out of the box. Red Bull's, by contrast, needs nurturing. But when it's in the right window, it's still a weapon. Verstappen's job now is to make sure that window is open every weekend. So where does that leave us? Has Red Bull truly turned the corner? Or will Monaco reveal that Imola was just a blip of brilliance in an otherwise unpredictable campaign? And more importantly, can Verstappen handle the heat from two of the grid's hungriest rising stars? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. This title fight is only just beginning.